I'm watching my wealthy half-sisters emotionally destroy our 90-year-old dad, bully my exhausted mom, demand the family farm he legally left to her, and manipulate him into believing they'll only love him if he gives it all to them. And now I'm wondering if I'm wrong. I'm 25, and my family tree looks like someone took shears to it at random points over the decades. I have a twin brother, 25M, and then two half-sisters from my dad's first marriage, one around 65, the other close to 60. My dad turned 90 this year. The age gaps alone make everything feel like we're all part of entirely different generations, but it's more than that. My half-sisters have always held me at arm's length. They adore my twin. He fits neatly into their world, sporty, simple, normal. I'm the one who dresses creatively, who paints, who collects weird earrings, who writes instead of watches sports. And they've never tried to hide that they think I'm the oddball of the family. They were never outright cruel, but the vibe was always there. Eye rolls, whispered comments, polite smiles that never made it to their eyes. I always felt like a visitor in my own bloodline. But that's background noise now, compared to what's going on. Every 2 years we have a huge family reunion. Our extended family is scattered across the US, so these events are one of the few ways my dad gets to reconnect with relatives he grew up with. This year I couldn't go. My mom, 70, couldn't either. But my dad, who has been declining mentally and physically, wanted to go desperately. So my twin brother went with him. Dad's been showing signs of early dementia for a few years. Forgetting names, mixing up how people are related, telling the same story multiple times in a single conversation. He's also physically frail. He shuffles now instead of walking. He gets winded easily. He needs help standing up from chairs. He's still sharp in small moments, but those moments are becoming fewer. At the reunion, my sisters saw him like that for the first time. Really saw him. And I think it shocked them. My brother told me later they were whispering a lot, watching him closely, almost studying the way he drifted in and out of conversations. And I think something dawned on them. Dad doesn't have many years left. Maybe not many months. And this might have been the last reunion he attends. After they got home, everyone shifted focus to his upcoming 90th birthday. My mom wanted to host a party to celebrate him, and my half-sisters jumped in to help. For the first time in years, they were enthusiastic. They talked to him constantly about the big celebration they were planning, how all his children would be there, how they'd make it special, how he deserved something huge. Dad lit up. It was the most excited I'd seen him in months. He talked about it nonstop. He told neighbors, cousins, even a mailman about this big party the girls are planning. But while all this was happening, while they were hyping up this emotional, sentimental birthday event, they also began asking my mom questions. Not gentle questions. Not theoretical questions. Direct questions. About the family farm. About who it was going to. About what Dad had written down. About whether things were in order. The farm is a huge part of our history. Dad grew up there. It belonged to his parents. Later, he bought it. His first wife, my sister's mother, also helped pay for part of it. And after she died, Dad held onto that land like it was the last physical piece of her. I've always respected that. My mom has, too. She never tried to compete with that memory. She just helped maintain the place financially, physically, everything. That farm still grows cotton, which helps pay the bills for the house my parents currently live in. It funds Dad's little adventures, his reunions, his trips to visit family. It keeps him connected to who he used to be. Before I go any further, I need to explain just how uneven the financial landscape in my family is, because it makes what happened next feel even more surreal. One of my half-sisters is in the top 1%, like actual private jets, vacationing in Europe twice a year levels of wealthy. Her husband works for a man whose name you'd instantly recognize, the kind you only see on the news or in magazines. My other half-sister isn't quite on that level, but still lives in a Hilton Head-type place where every house looks like a postcard and the grocery store parking lot is half luxury cars. They're not just comfortable, they're set. Meanwhile, my parents live in a perfectly normal middle-class home. Comfortable, sure, but nowhere near that league. Which is why their sudden obsession with the farm makes even less sense, unless you realize it's not about money. It's about control. Legacy. The symbolism of being first family. My mom told me something recently that I didn't know. When she and my dad first got married, decades after his first wife passed, he promised her the farm. Not out of greed, but because he was much older than she was, and he wanted to ensure she would be taken care of after he was gone. It made sense. His older daughters were already married, financially stable, living their own lives. My mom, on the other hand, had helped keep the farm running. She paid for repairs, taxes, upkeep, everything. They co-owned it. She had put just as much into its survival as he had. And honestly, that felt right to me.
Fair.
Balanced. But apparently it didn't feel that way to my sisters. Because somewhere along the line, my dad had this habit of promising the farm to everyone at some point in their lives. Not maliciously, just the kind of sentimental storytelling older people do. He'd say things like, "Someday, this land will be yours," to each of us at one point or another. I always thought it was just his way of expressing love and connection. Something poetic. I never thought it was literal paperwork level stuff. But my sisters took those casual comments as gospel. So when they found out, officially, that my mom was the legal inheritor, everything exploded. My eldest half-sister had a full-blown meltdown. She accused my mother of manipulating my dad, of being greedy, of stealing a property that belonged to their mother's memory. She yelled at her. She called her cruel. My mom cried afterward. She kept saying she never wanted the farm to be a source of pain. She just wanted to honor my dad's wishes and feel secure in her future. A couple weeks later, my other half-sister chimed in. She sent a long, dramatic message in our family group chat. She said she agreed with her sister, that leaving the farm to my mother was disrespectful to their late mother, the woman who had helped buy it. That it was wrong for my mom to take the land she didn't deserve. She actually used that word, deserve. The whole message read like a condemnation. As if my mom had committed some moral crime by simply existing after their mother died. After that first explosive phone call, things somehow got even uglier. My sisters didn't just express disappointment or ask questions. They went into full harassment mode. Every day my parents woke up to 20 or 30 texts, long rambling accusations about fairness, and their mother's legacy. They called constantly, not to discuss anything but to shout. They targeted my mom most, blaming her for everything despite the fact that she and my dad currently co-own the farm and have spent decades maintaining it. My mother is already stretched thin. She handles nearly all caregiving for my dad, runs the house, works nonstop, and still supports my brother and me. Watching her crumble under this barrage was awful. She wasn't sleeping. She was anxious every time her phone buzzed. Even then, wanting peace, my mom offered a compromise she absolutely didn't owe anyone. Give up the entire farm and split it 4 ways among my dad's children. I was there when she told him.
He was relieved.
He said it felt fair, and hoped it would end the fighting. But my eldest half-sister's reaction made everything clear. When she heard the proposal, she said, stiff and icy, "Well, I won't say what I really think about that."
Her tone said everything.
She wasn't satisfied because it wasn't about equality. It was about control, ownership, and rewriting family loyalty as something owed to her. Then came the message dump. My sisters started listing every kind thing they've ever done for us. Trips they paid for, dinners they treated us to, times they visited. They even claimed my brother only got into college because one wrote a recommendation letter. It was deeply hurtful, like they had kept some secret ledger of favors waiting to cash in when it benefited them. To me, kindness that comes with strings attached was never kindness at all. Meanwhile, my dad had no real understanding of the ugliness happening behind the scenes. He was simply excited about his upcoming 90th birthday. He thought his daughters were planning a beautiful celebration because they loved him. He talked about it constantly. He thought we would all be together. Then they told him they weren't coming. They said they refused to travel because they didn't want to be around my mother and were too upset about the farm situation. They announced they were planning their own birthday party for him, out of state, and explicitly said my mom was not invited. My father can barely travel anymore. His body aches constantly, his memory comes and goes, and unfamiliar places overwhelm him. Traveling isn't just difficult, it's painful. But they expected him to board a plane simply to accommodate their grudge. When my dad heard my mom wasn't welcome, he refused immediately. He told them he wouldn't go anywhere his wife wasn't invited. And he meant it. For all his frailty, his loyalty to my mother is unshakable. She is his stability, his caretaker, the person who keeps him going day after day. I truly believe he wouldn't still be alive without her devotion. The phone calls and text messages didn't stop. They continued for another 4 months, almost every single day. My dad would be sitting in his chair or in the kitchen or out on the porch, and suddenly the phone would ring. He'd sigh, deep, heavy, and answer it because he still loved them, still hoped maybe today they'd speak to him like daughters instead of prosecutors. But they never did. Even without speakerphone, you could hear the yelling. Their voices carried through the thin walls, sharp and relentless. Accusations, guilt trips, twisting his words, bringing up the past, demanding explanations he'd already given a dozen times. They wore him down to nothing. It broke him. My dad, my sweet, gentle, aging dad, started drinking heavily, something he'd never done before. He'd sit on our front porch with his head in his hands, crying, saying things like, "I wish I would just die so they'd stop hating me," or, "Why do my girls hate their father?" He'd say he was failing them, that he caused all this pain, that he didn't understand how it got so bad. Watching him crumble like that was one of the hardest things I've ever been through. And I was the only child living at home. I saw it all. I heard it all. I sat beside him when he shook during anxiety attacks, when he couldn't catch his breath, when he asked me if he'd been a bad father. I reassured him over and over that none of this was his fault, but he was too beaten down to believe it. Meanwhile, my mom wasn't doing any better. She was carrying everything. My dad's declining health, the house, her job, her own hurt, and the blame my sisters kept piling on her. She cried quietly almost every night. She'd sit on the edge of their bed with her head bowed like a person trying to hold a dam together with her bare hands. And still, my sisters insisted she was the problem, even though she hadn't said a single word to them in months. They blamed her for turning dad against them, even though the only thing my mom had done was survive their cruelty. Eventually, despite everything, we went ahead with the birthday party. My sisters were still invited. They claimed they couldn't make it, but we all knew why. They didn't want to be in the same room as my mother. So, I was the only one of his children at the celebration. My twin brother had just started a new overnight job. He physically couldn't take off a weekday to drive the 4 hours to our town, but he came down that weekend, on my dad's actual birthday, to celebrate with him. My dad was thrilled to see him, but I could still see the disappointment tucked in the corners of his eyes. He had hoped, even after everything, that all his kids would show up. But the party itself was beautiful. 30 of his closest friends arrived. They brought food and gifts and memories and stories from decades of knowing him. They hugged him, toasted him, told him how much he meant to them. I watched my dad beam in a way I haven't seen in years. At one point he even cried, but it was happiness, for once. He told me later that night, "I think that might have been the most love I've ever felt in my whole life." I cried hearing him say that. Relief, joy, heartbreak, all tangled together. He still talks about that party now, months later. He remembers what people said, what they gave him, how he felt. My sisters have finally calmed down a bit with the constant calls and messages, but the wounds they carved into our family haven't healed at all. Instead of the explosive daily harassment, they now call my dad to talk about random things, vacations, their kids, shopping, gossip, but every so often they slip in a poison line like, "I'm sorry Mom ruined the last few years we had with you," or, "It's sad she's taken so much from us." They say these things casually, like small remarks, but they land like blows. My dad usually ignores those messages. Sometimes he'll defend my mom, but mostly he just stays silent because he's terrified of triggering another storm. He's scared of them raising their voices, scared of their anger, scared of the stress that eats at his health. And now, after months of this emotional torture, he has started begging my mom to give them the farm entirely before he dies, because he feels like it's the only way they'll stop. The only way he can leave this world at peace. The only way they will love him again. It makes me sick to see how deeply they've worn him down. In my eyes, they have bullied him into believing that their love is conditional, that unless they get exactly what they want, he isn't worth anything to them. And me? I'm at the point where I don't want them in my life at all. They've always treated me like an outsider, even when I was a child. They were older, wealthier, and always carried themselves like they were above us. They never seemed to like me much, but that never really bothered me because they weren't a big part of my life. But this, watching them break my dad and torment my mom, I don't think I can ever forgive that. We're also terrified they'll try to sue. Legally, the farm is in my mom and dad's names. They can't win. But that doesn't comfort us much because they can afford to drag us through a long, expensive legal process that my parents absolutely cannot handle financially or emotionally. The idea of them weaponizing their wealth out of spite feels very real. I do understand that the farm reminds them of their mother. I understand that it holds deep sentimental value, that they see it as a connection to her. But the truth is, the farm holds memories for all of us. My entire childhood is woven into that land just as much as theirs. My twin brother and I grew up there too. We worked there. We cared for it. We loved it. Why is dividing it equally among all of my father's children not enough for them? Why does it have to be everything or nothing? The more I think about it, the more I realize my sisters don't see the farm as a shared memory. They see it as a prize, a trophy, something they feel entitled to because of their wealth, their status, their version of the past. And if they have to break our family to get it, they don't seem to care. So here I am, wondering if I'm a terrible person for wanting to cut them out of my life completely. Wondering if it's wrong to say enough after everything they've put my parents through. Wondering if protecting my mom and dad from more pain makes me cruel.